Hi, welcome to Reborn Nation. I thought with my first video what I would do is read a post that I wrote a couple months ago, giving people information on reborn dolls, and then next time I'll start introducing you guys to the dolls and the nursery and everything, okay? I thought this would just be a nice way to kind of get some information out there. So this is a post I wrote on June 4th of 2023, and it says, please feel free to share this post and help people become more knowledgeable about reborns and their benefits. Why reborn dolls and more frequently asked questions. Here's what I've learned from doing research on the topic of why people buy and or collect reborn dolls. First of all, what is a reborn doll? That's the question I get most often. A reborn doll is a lifelike and life-size replica of a baby, toddler, or child. They come in many sizes, both boys and girls, all skin tones, and can be bald with painted hair or rooted hair. They come from micro preemies to child-sized dolls. Some have other features like being asleep or being awake, teeth, smiles, laughs, frowns, and even some are crying. You see my dog on the side there. That's Everly. She's always with me, so she'll be in a lot of videos. They often have very realistic hands and feet, but there's also a variety called cuddle babies that have a vinyl or silicone head and all cloth body and limbs. As the name implies, these babies are more cuddly. Reborns come in two mediums, usually vinyl or silicone. The silicone vinyl is not a thing and usually indicates an illegal sculpt. More on that subject later. So if you go on like eBay or Amazon and you see a silicone vinyl reborn baby, then generally it's an illegal sculpt because silicone vinyl is not a thing. In fact, silicone and vinyl repel each other, so you couldn't make a silicone vinyl baby. There are two mediums. There's vinyl and then there's silicone. So one of the ways you can tell an illegal sculpt is when you read that it's a silicone vinyl baby. That is generally a fake sculpt. So next part is reborns are called reborns because they are reborn from a kit to something else. They are first born when the kits are sculpted out of clay and created when they are reborn and created. And then they are reborn when that kit is painted and rooted and gives birth to a new creation of a doll. What's the difference between reborn dolls and we're going to say SEX, but it's SEX, dolls? I don't know what the rules are on YouTube about saying SEX, so I'm just going to say SEX. The difference is the reason behind them. SEX dolls are made with a sexual purpose in mind. They are created for the specific purpose of eliciting a sexual response. Reborns are created to elicit a maternal response. There is nothing sexual about them, and they serve no sexual purpose. The intent is to replicate the care and feeling of and for a real child. The response is completely caregiving and maternal in nature. Regardless of the reason behind the creation of the doll, reborn doll collectors, as a general rule, derive no sexual gratification from looking at or playing with their reborn dolls. Again, their desire is to mother and nurture a baby, not experience that kind of sexual response. That is not to say that there are not a few people out there who may find some gratification of a sexual nature from having these dolls. But in general, that has not been the case, and I have never met anyone who uses these dolls for that purpose. How are reborn dolls created? Reborn dolls are a work of art. To start with, each kit is sculpted by a sculptor out of clay and then reproduced in either vinyl or silicone. Again, vinyl silicone is not a thing. A kit refers to the specific sculpt created by the sculptor out of clay. Usually only one or maybe two clay prototypes of a sculpt or kit are created in clay. The sculpt is then named and sent to a factory to be reproduced out of vinyl or silicone. If a doll is going to be made out of silicone, then molds are made of the clay baby. After that, the person who created them then either sends them off to someone else who pours them, or they pour them themselves. And basically the way they do that is they take the clay baby and they form a mold around it. And then they pour silicone into the mold. They allow it to dry and solidify. Then the outer mold is removed and voila, you have a new silicone baby. Each reborn is hand-painted and hair-applied by hand. There are no machines that people use to make reborn dolls. It's all done by hand. Some people collect and admire these dolls as a work of art, displaying them in their homes. Each one is unique and has its own charm, look, and flaws, just like real children. An artist orders a blank kit, which is an unpainted, semi-skin color, empty doll with parts, usually a head, arms, legs, sometimes a belly plate, or a full vinyl body. The artist then details the skin color on the doll, usually adding veins, undertones, blushing, etc. The artist will also weight and dress the doll in real baby's clothes. Like all forms of art, there are artists of all calibers, from beginning to full trained expert artists. Price, usually, but not always, reflects the artist's skill level and experience. So one of the things I want to say is that when reborns are created, because I paint them and make them as well, you start with the undertones and the veining, and then you do the blushing and all that on top of it. And the goal is to get like the sort of the dark undertones that we as humans have around our mouths, have around our eyes and nose. Those are places where blood flows particularly close to the skin, and or like on your wrist where you have veins showing. They try to make that show. Where would one get a reborn doll? From many places, actually. You can buy them off websites like reborns.com or eBay. Some people join groups or communities on Facebook and find artists there. Some people get them in trades or from friends. It is always best to talk to someone who's been in the community about where to get a doll before purchasing, as not all sites are legit. What does it mean when someone says my doll is fake? Aren't all reborns fake babies? When someone in the reborn community refers to a doll as fake or a knockoff, they are referring to the origin and legality of the doll. All reborns are fake babies in that they aren't real babies, but a fake reborn is a reborn that is illegally produced. Sometimes people take a sculpt of a licensed artist and recreate doll kits to sell as their own. Reproducing someone else's work, which the original sculpts are, without the artist's permission is a copyright infringement and illegal. They are very frowned upon in the reborn community, as they rob artists of their profits and sculptors of the profits of their sculpts. While some people see them as a more budget-friendly option, they are illegal and akin to knowingly accepting a stolen car from someone or other stolen property. So let me explain what I mean by, and I'm going to use one of my dolls for this. So this is London. She's the Saskia kit, and I've had her for many years, probably about 8 years. She's one of my favorites. But basically, if I wanted to create an illegal doll, I would take this little one and strip all her clothes off, and then I would make a mold of her around the outside of her. Then I would remove her from the mold and fill the mold with either vinyl or silicone. And then I could recreate her as a new kit and I could sell it, but that's illegal because this kit was produced by Bonnie Brown. Bonnie Brown owns the rights to this kit, and to reproduce it without her permission is illegal and copyright infringement. But that's how people do it, and that's how a lot of companies in China do it, is that they take a doll that they have, or they buy a real doll and then they make a mold of it, and then they cast their own kits and they sell them much cheaper because the materials that they use are much cheaper in price. And a lot of people fall for that, but they usually don't look as good as real reborns. Their painting is usually not as good. Their hair is usually machine applied, so it's not going to look as good. And they're usually not weighted. They're very, very light. So that's an example of what happens with illegal sculpts. All right. Why do people use reborns? Some people use and collect reborns. I am so sorry. People use and collect reborns for many reasons. First, as I mentioned earlier, some people collect and admire them as works of art, much like you would collect paintings or coins. Another reason people might have reborns is that they have lost a child or are unable to have children. For many who can't conceive or have lost a baby, that biological and maternal desire doesn't and need still exists whether they have a baby or not. Research has shown a direct link between positively dealing with grief of either having lost a baby or not being able to have one with owning a reborn doll. Holding realistic dolls releases oxytocin in the brain and makes the person feel good, calm, and happy. It also helps women and men feel like they are holding a real baby. Some people have their baby's ashes put inside a reborn or have the doll rooted with their child's hair. This promotes an even closer bond with the doll. Another thing that research has shown is that reborns and holding and or caring for them has a positive effect on Alzheimer's disease. It can slow or stop the progression, and in some rare cases, even reverse the symptoms of Alzheimer's, which is pretty amazing if you think about it. And a lot of nursing homes are now using them to help people to recover, or not recover, but slow down Alzheimer's. I'm not sure why it works, but it has been proven to work, which is pretty amazing. In some cases, it can slow or stop the progression, and in some rare cases, reverse some of the damage. They have been shown to help with illnesses like cancer, diabetes, high blood pressure, and chronic pain. While this research is still in its infancy, what has been studied is very positive and promising. As I said, there are many reasons people might collect them, and all, as far as I know, are positive reasons. Who would collect these dolls? The reality is that many people, both men and women from all walks of life, collect these dolls. I know in the community we have doctors, lawyers, politicians, nurses, artists, restaurant workers, and many other occupations and income brackets. 99% of the people who collect them are not children. Contrary to popular belief, these dolls are not meant for children. They are works of art, and children destroy them very quickly. In fact, it is often stated that these dolls are not meant for children and not safe for children. Most collectors are adults, people young and old, all nationalities and races, parents and non-parents, men and women. There is no one type of collector. Are people who collect reborns crazy? Do they think they're real babies? Contrary to what you see at the end of many Lifetime movies and shows on the internet, most collectors do not sit in an insane asylum rocking back and forth singing to their reborns, believing they are real babies. All of the people I know who collect are not crazy. Most people know perfectly well that these are dolls and not real. They don't get into it because they think they're real. Judgment and crazy are nasty words that don't have any place in our society. I understand that the unknown is scary, and we all tend to react to scary things with judgment and anger. But there's no reason for it. There are thousands of collectors all over the world, and chances are you may know someone who has them or has had them in the past. They may not choose to share it for fear of judgment and shame. But there is nothing to be ashamed of. It is a better coping mechanism than drugs, drinking, gambling, etc. It doesn't hurt the collector or the community at large. We all need to be a little more understanding of people and learn their stories before we pass judgment. I don't think any of our lives would hold up if scrutinized under a microscope. A person who collects reborn dolls is no more likely to kidnap a child or commit a violent act than anyone else. Reborn doll collectors are not stalking maternity wards or pregnant women looking for an opportunity to get a baby. At least if collectors have children, at least if collectors have children of their own. Having a reborn baby that won't grow up and gives people the opportunity to be a mother when they want to be and not be tied down. I think that's very positive. What do people mean when they say they do or do not have a bond with their dolls? Why do they usually refer to them as babies instead of dolls? First, everyone has some bonding or affection for inanimate objects, whether it be your grandmother's earrings or your dream car. Maybe it's the outfit your baby wore home from the hospital or your favorite toy growing up. There are items we all have that would cause great emotional distress to part with. Because we are human and we have very complex emotions, many people have an emotional bond to one item or another. Things you couldn't imagine giving up. Items that make you feel good just by having it near or using it. I know people who would die trying to save their first copy of a book, the one rare stamp, or their favorite sweater. It is no different with reborns. Yes, they are dolls, but it is so easy to form an emotional bond or connection with them. Also, forming that bond greatly increases the emotional and physical benefits received from the doll. There is nothing wrong with bonding with items. It does not mean someone is crazy or that they don't know reality from fantasy. We all bond with items on a regular basis, and it causes no more issues in a doll collector's life than anyone else's. Why do they call them babies instead of dolls? This is, in general, in line with the bonding process. Everyone I know in the community knows they are dolls. They are not delusional or mentally disturbed. Referring to them as babies makes them more realistic and more comforting. It is insulting to some people to refer to their reborns as dolls. Please try to understand the preferred terms and respect them. The only time when a hobby is destructive, reborns and all other interests included, is when they overtake one's life so much that they become unable to function and or create and maintain any social relationships. That is true for anything in life. Why do you collect reborns? And I'm going to read off this, but I'm going to, because I wrote this, so it's my words. Get down, Ev. So I want to keep my thoughts straight, but I will add some things in. Personally, I got into collecting when a physical therapist recommended it for my chronic pain. I was extremely skeptical at first because even as a child, I didn't have dolls. I mean, I may have had one or two Cabbage Patch dolls or a baby doll, but I didn't collect dolls. And certainly not into my teens and 20s. I was, let's see, I was 41 when I got into doll collecting. So, you know, I was pretty late in life. I was extremely skeptical at first, but in time, I really did see a benefit for both my pain and my mood. Over time, I also came to greatly appreciate the art and the craftsmanship that goes into each doll. I don't understand this, and it makes me uncomfortable. Why is this? So let me say a little bit, before I go on, let me say a little bit more about my doll collecting. So when my physical therapist recommended Reborn dolls for my chronic pain, I was pretty skeptical. I was like, this lady's crazy. Why is she telling me to get a doll? Like, I don't get it. I had never heard of Reborns. I had never seen Reborns. I had never had any contact with anybody who had Reborn dolls. So I really didn't sorry, I have the hiccups. I really didn't understand this mentality. And when I first got the doll, she gave me one of hers. I took it home and she said, pretend it's real. And I really didn't. I kind of just put it down and forgot about it. And then when I went back to her a couple weeks later, I said, oh, it didn't work. And she was like, well, did you really try? And I was like, I had to be honest. And I said, no. So she said, take it home again, try it for a couple weeks, and just give it a try. Like, you don't take it out with you. Just do it when you're home. And so I started actually trying. I started dressing the baby every day and playing with it and trying to, bond with it. And by the end of the 2 weeks, I had noticed, the second part of the 2 weeks, I had noticed a marked difference in my pain. It was really amazing. And so then an artist, who I'm not sure, I probably won't name on here, but she gifted me my first doll. And once I had the trial period with my physical therapist, and I just fell in love with that doll. And I've seen positive benefits ever since. And my family, I think, was a little skeptical at first, but once they saw the positive benefits that I was having from the doll, they've been incredibly supportive. There's been no issues. It doesn't affect my life in a negative way, so they're pretty positive. So then I had someone say this to me, and so this is why I put it in here. I don't understand this, and it makes me uncomfortable. Why is this? Many of the uncomfortable feelings produced by seeing someone with a reborn are triggered and in some cases created by movies about fetal abduction, pregnancy, and other related topics and stories on the internet, along with people's imaginations. These movies portray people who have these dolls as lunatics, unable to differentiate between reality and fantasy, as a danger to themselves and others. Desperate to get a baby at any cost. But like most movies, these images are false and greatly exaggerated. Most people fear what they don't understand. Reborns tend to cause a much more profound reaction than other hobbies. I don't know if this is because people associate dolls mainly with little girls, but many men collect toy cars, Transformers, action figures, and they don't get the kind of hate that reborn doll collectors get. Women collect teddy bears, spoons, thimbles, and many other things that don't bother people like collecting dolls do. I think people are mainly uncomfortable because of the images in movies and on the internet that portray adult doll collectors as unstable and dangerous. Neither is true. 99.9% of doll collectors are normally functional, sane, and productive members of society. So one of the things I want to point out is if you look at most of the fetal abduction movies, the person doesn't end up in jail. They end up in an insane asylum, and you have this picture of them in a straitjacket in a padded room at the end of the movie, and they're sitting there and they're rocking their dolls and they're staring out into space, babbling, and they look crazy. And that's the idea that the movie wants to portray, but it has also put a negative spin on reborn doll collecting. The reality is that I have 2 children and 2 stepchildren, and I do not do not want a baby. I do not want a real baby. I do not want to mother a baby. I've already raised my kids. I don't want to raise another child. I enjoy the Reborn community. I enjoy the friends that I meet, and I enjoy the dolls. But I am not in need or on the market for a real baby. I don't want to raise another child. It's just not what I'm up for. So I know a lot of people, when they see these videos, a lot of the comments say, just have a baby. Well, first of all, I can't have a baby. I don't have the parts, number one. Number two, I'm past that point in my life. So even if I had the parts, I probably couldn't have a baby. And second of all, I don't want a baby. I have no desire to raise another child. I enjoy my dolls. I can put them down when I don't want to play with them, and I can pick them up when I want to. I don't want a baby. So if people think that just having a baby will cure me of reborns, I know people in the community who've had babies while they have dolls. And of course, when they first have the baby, their dolls kind of take a back seat to the baby's needs. But over time, as the baby gets older, they come back to their dolls. It's a love for the hobby. It is not about having a baby. You may like them if given a chance, and you may not, but it is never okay to judge or shame a friend, family member, or acquaintance. If it doesn't hurt them or anyone else, please try to be supportive and understanding. It may not be for everyone, but that is true for most things. You may not understand why someone would dye their hair, get Botox, enjoy running or reading, have a 16-step nighttime beauty routine, wash their car every week, clean their house until it is sparkling, and many other things we all do different, but that does not make it okay to judge, shame, or embarrass people. Why do people dress up their dolls and take pics to share? Just like any collection, people like to interact with their collection. Dressing, holding, pretending to feed, and caring for your reborns is how many, but not all, collectors interact with their collection. As with any collection, people like to add to it, get new babies, new sculpts, and just experience another reborn. The other attraction to reborns is the community. It is, for the most part, a caring and supportive community where people can make many friends. That is why people post pics. It is to share their collection with like-minded people and friends. Finally, the most frequently asked question is, what do they cost? The scale for prices of reborns is vast. It can range from $70 on the very low end to $10,000 plus on the very high end. Many factors influence the price of a doll. What the kit is it rare or hard to find? They are usually more expensive. What is it made of? In general, vinyl babies tend to be cheaper than silicone babies. Silicone babies are often much more expensive. Other factors include the realism of the doll, whether it is bald, has painted hair, or rooted hair, the size of the doll, what the doll comes with, where the doll is created. Shipping can be very spendy internationally. And the features the doll has. All of these factors go into pricing. A general range for vinyl dolls is $200 to $2,500 per doll. The general range for silicone dolls is $1,500 to $7,000. Again, these are just ranges, and there are most likely dolls both above and below these general ranges. But this is like the average of what people spend. Most of my dolls have cost me somewhere between $500 and $1,200. That's just a reality of doll collecting. And so that's been kind of my range. I'm really leery and wary of dolls that are under $200. Even though they can be real, they generally at that price are not authentic. Although you can get dolls at that price that are authentic, it's harder. You know, they tend to be more illegal at that price range. Let's talk about some of the features reborns can have. They can be bald with no visible hair. They can have they can be painted using paint and a brush to create hair, or they can be rooted. Rooting is the process where hair, either synthetic or real hair, is pushed through the scalp with a needle. And I will eventually be doing videos of showing you how these processes of making them work. That will be part of the videos as well, but I'm not going to do that today. There are a few types of rooting. Rooting is usually many hairs per hole. Micro rooting is usually 2 to 4 hairs per hole. And the most realistic is mono rooted, which is 1 hair per hole. And the artist will actually take 1 hair at a time and push it through the scalp. Let me give you an example of a baby that's mono rooted. This is London again, and she is the Saskia, and she is mono rooted. Now it's hard to see. but she has 1 hair per hole. And right now her hair is kind of a mess, but when you curl it, it just curls over into this little, it's so cute. But she is combi hair, which means that she has painted hair, which you can see on the back of her head. Those are painted brush strokes. And then she has rooted hair on top of it, only on the top of her head. So that's an example of combi hair. And this is an example of, and let me show you, I have a baby doll. Hold on one second. I have a baby doll that has regular rooted hair, which has many hairs per hole. And it is very obvious to see the difference. Hold on one second. Let me get the doll. This is Asia, and she is the Evelyn by Cassie Brace. And her rooting is not done nearly as detailed. You can see that she has more hairs per hole, and it's not as filled in. So this is an example of a regularly rooted doll in comparison to London's hair, which is the 1 hair per hole. So that's an example of the rooting styles. You'll notice as I stand up and move around during videos that I have a tube that is connected to my body. It comes out of my stomach right here. It is not a vaginal catheter. It is surgically implanted in my stomach. Here's the tube itself. And it is a catheter because of my disease, which is Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. My bladder muscles have become basically useless in the last 10 years of my life. And so I had to have this tube put in so that I could, in fact, urinate. So that's why when I stand up, sometimes you will see a tube or a line that I carry with me. So yeah, I just wanted to point that out. Okay, let's go back to this. So sleeping babies obviously don't need eyes, but there's a large range of doll eyes for open-eyed babies. They range from cheap acrylic to ultra-realistic glass eyes. Some eyes have the little veins and capillaries on them, some don't. Some babies come with removable or permanent umbilical cords. They can have freckles, moles, birthmarks, cuts, scars, etc. Some can take a full bottle or pacifier, and some can take a modified pacifier, and some have a magnet behind the mouth that allows for a magnetic pacifier. They can have heartbeats, breathing simulators, and or warming packs to make them more realistic. Some comes with baby items such as clothing, diapers, accessory, often referred to as a box opening. Some come with none of that stuff. They can be made lighter or heavier based on the customer's wishes. Some are custom made when the artist gets all the details from the customer, like kit, eye color, hair color, skin tone, and weight. And some artists create their own vision and put them up for sale afterwards. Some artists take payments and some don't. There are many ways to get and order a Reborn, and many artists with different policies. There is a way for anyone who wants one to find one. You just have to be patient and look. What should you consider when buying a Reborn? First is price. Anything under $100 is usually a scam or an illegal baby. The term "you get what you pay for" is very true in this community. There are very talented artists that charge very reasonable prices, and many will work with people who are low income. It is always advised to buy authentic dolls and kits. They support the industry, the artist, and allow for more sculpts and kits to be produced. Always ask to see an artist's previous work. Anyone can get lucky once.